All right, don't clap yet because I haven't given you any info yet. So today, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about developer evangelism, about the Internet of Things, AWS Lambda, and Twilio. And there's a lot of other stuff happening at the same time, so thank you guys for being here versus being in whatever other location you could be in right now. All I want to do to start off is talk about, who am I and what do I do at Amazon. So my job at Amazon is not this, which is what I do fairly often. It's like enterprise marketing. I wear a suit. I go to reInvent. I go to these big conferences, and I talk in front of thousands of people. That's not what my real job is. My real job is this. It's going and speaking with individual engineers like you guys and figuring out what's wrong with AWS, what's right with AWS, how do we fix it. So literally, all my job is to talk to you guys. So if you have any issues with AWS that you're dealing with and you need like a fast track to get it fixed, I'm the person you want to talk to because I will make sure that we get it fixed as fast as possible. Who here already uses AWS? OK, so for the benefit of any video, that was 100% of the audience. So everyone's already on AWS. And for those of you who aren't, AWS, Amazon Web Services, we started in 2007. Basically, we are an on-demand global IT solutions provider. So like you think about IT solutions and infrastructure and things like this, and what it really is it's application level services, queues, messages, things like this. It's elasticity provided by the cloud. So when you think about cloud services, that's what Amazon Web Services is. So I think a lot of people here are already very familiar with that. I can't see the audience at all because there's this huge light in my face. But I just guessed at what the audience said. So like I said, I'm here for you. My job is to listen to you guys. So after this presentation, it's going to be short and sweet. I want you guys to come over to the AWS booth. Any questions you have, it could be like, how can I make money mining Bitcoin on AWS? How can I do X on AWS? I will help you answer those questions. It's literally all I exist to do. I can't make that clear. OK, we're done with me. Let's talk about something really exciting, the Internet of Things. Who thinks the Internet of Things is something that's going to happen? You're all wrong. It's already happened. It's already here. Have you guys seen this, like this Amazon Dash button? It's a thing that brings me more things. I press this button and more stuff comes. It's bizarre. Like it's just a button that sits in my pantry, and when I run out of something, I press this button and more things come. I don't have to do anything else. It's bizarre. Like I live in New York, which is the greatest city in the world. Woo! So in New York, we have this thing called City Bike. It's a bike sharing program. And what happens with City Bike is they're able to track what dock you use. I don't have my keys on me, but literally, for those of you who have never seen this sort of thing before, I take my key and I put it into this dock and I get a bicycle, and then I can pedal the bicycle around to anywhere in the city, and then I can put it back in another dock, and it just works. What happened to me the other day is that they were doing maintenance on one of the docks that I use frequently, and they were able to say, based on the fact that I use this dock frequently, these are the docks around it that you can use while this maintenance is happening. This is what the Internet of Things is enabling, right? It's enabling this future where all of this data is making my life better. If I had gone to the dock at Grand Central and it hadn't been working that morning, I would have been kind of ticked because then I would have had to walk to work, and it's not a fun thing to do. We have these other things, like the Amazon Echo. I tried rehearsing this presentation at home, and every time I did it, the Echo would respond. So I've learned to say Echo instead of Alexa, which is the keyword that initiates the Echo device. Has anybody seen an Amazon Echo? Does anybody have one? Nobody? OK, if you have a Prime membership, grab one of these. They're $100. They're friggin' awesome. OK, I thought it was a complete piece of crap the first time I saw it. I was like, what is this? It's a thing that talks to me. Like, big deal. It's the only gadget that I use as consistently as my phone. OK, it's an Internet of Things device backed by a cloud service that I can have it talk to other Internet of Things devices. So I say, hey, turn on my lights, and it'll turn on the lights in my living room. I never imagined a future where my light bulb would have an IP address. So it's kind of bizarre that we live in this world. So what is the Internet of Things then? Like, what does it really mean? The Internet of Things doesn't mean it has an IP address. I know that I said that about the light bulbs, but what it really means is that it's an addressable, detailed device. It has push and pull data. So we're not just pulling data. It's not a SCADA system like for a power grid or something like that. Like it's pushing data out to some service, and we're pulling data from it. and it's intelligent data. It's not collecting everything. And then it's also characterized by a ton of data. And when I say a ton of data, I'm going to give you some stats. So Newstex published this report back in 2013 that said 5 exabytes of content were created by humankind from the beginning of recorded history until 2003. After 2003, every single day in 2013, we have created the equivalent amount of content. And admittedly, that is a lot of teenagers posting on Zanga and Facebook and MySpace and stuff like this. But at the same time, that utterly pales in comparison to the amount of data that you will see generated by the Internet of Things. Humans suck at creating data. They're imprecise, they're impractical, they're inaccurate. They are terrible at creating and collecting and doing things with data. Computers are really good at that. They're really good at producing data. If you want to think 5 exabytes is a big number, that is produced every single day by the National Climatic Data Center, backed by NOAA in Asheville, North Carolina. Like these guys, they collect data about the weather from automated sensors, and that's 5 exabytes a day. Tremendous, tremendous amounts of data. Just, and it's all interesting. And that's what the Internet of Things is characterized by. But this presents some problems, right? It's a lot of data. We don't know what the right questions to ask of it are. And this is where Twilio sort of comes in. I'm going to talk, rather than about dealing with lots of data, which is what AWS is pretty good for, so if anybody wants to talk about that afterwards, please come over to the booth. I'm going to talk about a problem that's more personal. As an evangelist, I fly around a lot. This is an IPython notebook, and basically what I did is I just took my moves export, and I plotted all of the locations that I've been in the past few months or something. And when I travel around all the time, my apartment is often empty. And sometimes I want to Airbnb it out. Or maybe I want, my friends, I've got this guy, Mike Swift. Has anybody ever met Mike Swift before? Yeah. So, and I have this other friend who many of you probably know from Twilio. You probably know him better when he looks like this. So John Gottfried. They always want to, come over and I have an Xbox, I have HBO, I have Game of Thrones. Like, I have this beautiful apartment that I spend money on, but I'm never there. And I don't want it to go to waste. I want my friends to be able to use it. I want my family to be able to use it. And what I'm able to do with the Internet of Things and with AWS Lambda, which I'll talk about in a second, is I'm able to kind of unlock my apartment whenever I want. So the solution. Who has ever used a Lockatron? OK, so the Twilio crew over here has got it. But I am introducing today a brand new device that you can build in about 15 minutes and $120. The Knockatron. It's like the Lockatron. It'll unlock your door and everything. But it's based on a secret knock and an MMS. And this is how it works, right? It's pretty straightforward. I have an Arduino, and the Arduino sits in a lockbox. In a little key box, a magnetic key box, in my across my apartment door. And I took a screwdriver and I knocked out a little hole for a camera. And this camera, what it does is when I knock a certain way on the door, it'll take the picture. And that picture gets uploaded to S3, which is an Amazon Web Services service for object storage. S3, that upload, when it completes, will trigger an event in AWS Lambda. AWS Lambda is a way to run your code. I'll talk a lot more about that in a little bit. And then that Lambda event will talk to Twilio. And if it's somebody that it recognizes, sorry, don't ever drink carbonated drinks right before you get up on stage. What will happen is if it recognizes the person, it will just send me a Twilio notification, and it'll say, hey, this person went into your apartment to play Xbox. Like, John's in your apartment now. What will happen if it doesn't recognize the person, it'll send me an MMS, like a picture of the person, and I can say yes or no, approve this person entering or not. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through it one more time because this being the first time that you've seen it, I know the Knockatron is pretty stellar, and you guys are super excited about how it works. So I'm going to go through the logic one more time. Arduino detects the knock. It takes a picture. It uploads it to S3. Lambda detects the S3 upload event. We run our code to look at the faces, to recognize the faces. We send that over to Twilio. Twilio sends it over to me. I say yes or no. And then the Arduino unlocks the door based on what I send to Twilio. So I know you guys are wondering, like, I got to build messages. I got to build queues. I got to build all this mess to deal with it, right? Like, no. I don't want to deal with that. That's not my game. I hate dealing with real infrastructure. So, which is ironic because I work at a cloud infrastructure company. But AWS Lambda is a way for me to just write my code and get something working without giving a damn about anything else. Okay? I do not care what server it runs on, how it runs, things like this. So long as it runs immediately, like the latency, the 99th percentile latency is like 10 milliseconds after the upload. So long as that happens, I don't care what happens. I don't care what infrastructure it runs on. So that's what AWS Lambda allows me to do. I can literally take a method, I can copy and paste it into this box, and it will run in the cloud. And it blows my mind. It totally blows my mind every time that I deal with this, because this is the way that John McCarthy imagined computing. So anybody who has like read John or seen him talk or listened to any of his speeches over the years, in 1961 at MIT, he said something along the lines of, I one day imagine that computing will be a public utility. And that's what Lambda is. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a second. But what is event-driven computing? What is sort of this idea of triggers and things like this? So Lambda right now has a bunch of different triggers. I can trigger when a user is added to my database, when an object changes in my database. I can listen to the stream of information coming from that database, and I can perform actions based on that. When an S3 upload happens, I can perform actions on that. When an S3 download happens, like anything that has a plugin to a stream of data, I can have Lambda act on that. Who's ever used Cognito at AWS? So Cognito is our identity management service. You can auth in with Twitter, with Facebook, with SAML, with LDAP, all this other stuff. So it's a really great way of managing like access tokens and secret tokens and things like that, without ever having to deal with like storing it and encrypting it and all that mess that you normally have to deal with. So I can make things happen when a user starts in Cognito. So if you guys go to apodtwitter.com, it's all built on Lambda. The whole thing is built on Lambda. And it's the astronomy picture of the day Twitter. And all it does is every single time every single day when NASA uploads a new astronomy picture of the day, it will go through and it will say, update these 7,000 Twitter users' backgrounds. If anybody here works at Twitter, I'd love to talk to you about your media API, because there's some very high error rates on that. AWS Lambda is really cool because we get about as close as we can get to kilowatt hours. I mean, the way that we measure things with Lambda and the way that we price things with Lambda is literally gigabyte seconds, which is about as close to kilowatt hours as you can get. It's a rate. So if I use 128 megabytes for 10 seconds, that's 1 gigabyte second. If I use 1 gigabyte for 1 second, that's 1 second. If I use 2 gigabytes for half a second, that's 1 gigabyte second. So, I mean, I'm pretty bad at arithmetic, but I think you guys all get it, right? Enthusiastic crew here today. So let's walk through the code. Let me show you how Twilio is enabling me to like do this stuff. Sorry, I'm moving around a lot, and I think that might be messing with this. No? It's just the building. So here are the things that you have to do to get this working. And I will release all this code publicly, not today, but very soon I will release all this code publicly. And here are the two prerequisites you need, OK? You need to create an S3 bucket, which doesn't really cost you anything. And you need to create an IAM role, which also doesn't really cost you anything. I named my S3 bucket Homies Knockin' just because they're my friends, they're my family. Like, I figured it would be funny to call it Homies Knockin'. And then I have an IAM role, and all that IAM role has is it has two different things. It says I'm allowed to invoke Lambda functions, and I'm allowed to pull from S3. It doesn't need to do anything else. And this is what Lambda looks like. This is what the console looks like. It's literally a text box. I can paste stuff in if I want. We're not going to do that because I'm pretty bad at browsing the web, and I prefer working on the command line. But if you wanted to, you could write your code directly in the browser. This is what the events look like. They're all in JSON, and it's pretty straightforward, right? So I'm going to go off camera for a second, just because I don't know, weird. But you see, I have this records. I have the event source. It's coming from S3. And then over here, I've got the S3 object. And within that object, I have the key, and it's from camera 1, and it's got some UTC time. It's got some Unix epoch timestamp, right? It's straightforward stuff. I think anybody could parse this event. Obviously, there's actually a lot more information that's included in these events, but I sort of pulled that out so we didn't have to deal with it. And then we have some other stuff. we include a couple utilities, right? Like the AWS SDK is included by default. I include this utility called async, which if any of you have ever written JavaScript before and have dealt with promises and things like that, well, you realize why the language was written in 10 days, even if it really wasn't. And then I include OpenCV. Who has worked with OpenCV before? OpenCV is pretty interesting, right? You can do a lot of really interesting stuff. You can build eigenfaces and all kinds of really crazy image manipulation stuff. It's interesting. And then the other thing that I do is I include the Twilio stuff, and I actually hard-coded my keys in, but don't do that. And then I have my, my recipient number and my from number. And then this is what the basic stuff looks like. And I've taken some of the code out here. But what will happen is I will detect the event, I will grab the image, and I will then have this waterfall of actions that happens. I will download the image, I will detect the image, I will detect the faces within the image. I will then upload that image to S3 if I'm going to send it via MMS over Twilio. And then I will use Notify. And Notify is really the simple part of this. Notify, literally, I have if faces detected, clients send message. If not, do something else. It could not be simpler to write this sort of code. Like, it took me about an hour and a half to build this whole project. And if I had built it in traditional infrastructure, I don't even want to think about what the high availability concerns and the operational concerns and all this other stuff would have taken me. And it's really easy to do this stuff with Twilio, especially with the IP messaging stuff that they've launched recently. And I wish I'd known about video messaging a little bit earlier on, because I totally would have built a killer demo for you guys today based on that. So all of this code will be up very soon. There is another example piece of code that is up right now, and that's the APOD Twitter thing. Although I do think that it is an underscore and not a dash. Sorry about that. And then the Lambda Twilio demo will be up July 9th. And the only reason that I'm not showing it to you guys right now is just because I'm still playing around with it and trying to use some of these new features. And I don't want to show you guys not working code that's not easily deployable. I'd rather you get the code in its full glory that's easy to deploy and easy to use. That is my entire talk. So you guys get out of here 10 minutes early. You can go grab something. I'd really love your feedback about Lambda, about AWS, about Twilio. How can I make things better? Swing over by the booth in just a little bit and come chat with me. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. That's all I got.